Hiya, I'm James Otter of Otter Surfboards, and we design and make wooden surfboards and share the joy of making them with our customers on our 5-day workshop experiences.
I think I've always been into making stuff ever since I can remember. Being a kid, I was just into making and being creative with my hands. And growing up near a load of woodland, I was always drawn to making stuff out of wood. And then it was only as I went off to university, I was in Plymouth, started surfing a lot more, and I kind of pulled the two together, and that's where I fell in love with making surfboards out of wood. When it came to making stuff, I was into making stuff out of wood. Whereas then surfing came through coming down here on holiday as a family. So there's only snippets of through the summer, get into bellyboarding and then eventually surfing. And then when I went to Plymouth, so that was when I was like 19, 20, that was when I really started to go to the ocean an awful lot more. But at that point, the rest of my time was spent making things. So yeah, the making definitely came first. I think for me, definitely one thing about our surfboards, like you say, they stand out anyway because the majority of surfboards are made out of foam anyway. So simply making them out of wood makes them unique. But then we use only local timbers. So the main timbers that we use are Western red cedar and poplar, and they all come from the southwest of England. So that I think sets us apart as well, because a lot of people who might have a go at making a wooden board of any kind will import timber or use different timbers. So for me, that's what identifies them as ours, is the look of those two timbers. Wooden boards, definitely, they feel different in the water. So they tend to finish about 25% heavier, which gives you momentum. So they've got speed in them already. So a lot of the way that you surf them is about controlling speed rather than having to generate speed. A foam board, often what you have to put energy into turns to generate any kind of speed, whereas these boards, the minute you're paddling, you're dropping in, they just carry their speed, and it's a different experience. You end up working with the wave and trying to judge how to work with that speed. Fairly obsessed with having pretty lightweight boards, so wooden boards doesn't necessarily fit into that very easily because they're looking at pure performance. Whereas when we kind of think of a board, I'm making them thinking, I want this to last for decades. So you compromise some of the performance characteristics for a board that's going to last a long time. So we've done a few projects with pros where we've had them in the ocean on our boards, and getting some feedback is always really interesting and insightful because they're so attuned to their equipment, which is awesome. It's great to be able to do that. But I think the reality of wooden boards being in that competition sphere, I think it's probably a long time before that happens, sadly. I think it's about 90 square meters with an upstairs that probably adds half again, I think. So for me, I think there's two things I most enjoy about making surfboards. Often we'll get quite quirky commissions come through that might have quite technical inlays or something. So it's something that pushes my making, which I always find, I just like being challenged in that sense. But the main thing that I enjoy and the reason we exist is to invite people into our workshop to take them through the making process. So running our workshop courses for me is the bit that really connects to my heart. Sharing what you do with people is a real joy. So. Inspiration comes probably from quite a number of places. When it comes to the woodwork stuff, people I've worked with in the past, and then people, kind of designers who have used wood in really quite incredible ways is always something I'll go to. When it comes to surfboards, I'll look within the surf industry and the amount of different surfboards and makers out there. There's people in that industry definitely that inspire me. But realistically, I think like what inspires me to get out of bed in the morning is just the love of doing what I do. Living right by the coast and being able to get in the ocean, and then coming to the workshop and using my hands with wood that's inspiration enough for me. I think I've got about probably 4 at the minute, but I think 2 of those are in different shops on walls to try and promote what we do. one I've just picked up recently, and one I've been riding for about 7 years as my one board. So yeah, I don't have that many.
Have you made them all?
Yeah. I've been my thinking when it comes to making our boards is if they're made to last so long, you want them to be really versatile. So my kind of mission has been trying to figure out if I had one board ever, what would it be? Hence riding a board for 6 or 7 years, because I just want to take it out in so many different conditions to figure it out. And I think that, for me, I think that suits a lot of people more so than actually having. If you've got 10 boards, you go surfing and you're always sitting there thinking, well, should I be on a different one? Like, you always question your decision making. Whereas if you learn about one board, how it behaves in various conditions, you end up with a better connection to it. And also, I would say, a kind of freer and more enjoyable surfing. Funnily enough, there's a friend of mine who made one a number of years ago, lives in an old cottage, and his board doesn't fit in his cottage, so he leaves it here. So I must be honest, I do use that quite a bit, yeah. I think to get into making, for me, there's kind of 2 ways you can go into it. One, if you want to do it at home, getting set up and following YouTube tutorials is an amazing way to access making. It's an incredible resource for a lot of makers out there. But failing that, I would say if you kind of have an idea of what you might want to just have a go at, looking for local courses is always a really good place to start as well. It's a great chance to dip your toe into something and have the guidance and the kind of confidence that you get from being surrounded by people doing the same thing. It's always a good way to approach it. Interestingly, where we only use a small number of tools really in here, and they're relatively specific to what we do, or we don't use them in a traditional way. So I've got a little block plane, tiny little low angle block plane that I bought for myself, I think, for my 20th birthday. And that's my favorite tool. It's been my favorite tool ever since. So it's just a lovely tool to use. So I'd say a good plane to start with. I love the use of Japanese saws. So I would encourage anyone to just have a go with them. I think they're really lovely. Once you get used to the fact they cut on the pull stroke, I think they're a really nice tool to use. And then with us, for shaping things, we also use a rasp, a Japanese saw rasp. Those are kind of the 3 things that I'm always using. So to me, they're great in their versatility. I'm trying to think on other things what I've used, but don't know. Nothing else excites me like those, I don't think. The biggest challenge for a lot of makers is to do with just acquiring material. And I think that's where we're quite lucky in the way that, because I've always looked to local woodlands, like literally looking at the people managing the woodlands as to where we get the timber from, it allows us to understand the whole process, but also not be reliant on importing things, which is quite nice. Obviously from Woodstock we import plywood, but that's only a small amount of our cost. So that's for us, that's kind of, we can work around that, and it's not a huge thing. We don't use loads of it. So yeah, acquiring materials, and then, I think always just reaching and communicating with customers is always just an ongoing challenge, I think, for any business. Whether you're like we were talking about, whether you're finding new customers or whether you're trying to nurture the old relationships, it's work ultimately that isn't the making, isn't the doing. So yeah, that's always a bit of a challenge. When I was younger at school, trying to figure out future, because they pile the pressure on pretty early, don't they? I remember my dad saying to me, if you stick to what you enjoy, you'll end up doing something you love. And so that's, for me, has been something I always come back to whenever it comes to making any decision about my future, is to listen to kind of what it is that's exciting me and that I enjoy in that moment, and follow that. So that's what I would encourage anyone to do.